I'm Emily Chandler, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I have a private practice in Oakland, California. And I wanted to share some reflections on grief, trauma, and resilience. I've worked with clients dealing with changes and transitions in their lives, as well as explicit grief, death, and loss issues. And I've done this work with people who state they'd like to do so in the context of their Christian faith and others who do not have a faith. So that's my background and what brings me to this space today. I want to talk specifically about what happens when we're going through the grief process as we age. We might have had several friends that have passed, a spouse that we've lost. This might bring us to a situation where we're living alone and have challenging relationships, either with children or those who are remaining in the circle still, while still dealing with some of our own personal health things, including difficulty with memory, difficulty just in our bodies physically, managing, getting around, managing, doing daily tasks. So when we're grieving, I think of it in three phases. What do we do when we first have a major loss? Well, phase one can be really visceral. It can be really overwhelming. If we lose someone who's very close to us, we might cry. Not everyone, but you might find that happens for you. You need to lean on others, and that might look like providing food for you in those early days after your loss, or managing phone calls. You might want to share stories with those closest to you about the person that you lost. And you might let yourself acknowledge who they really were, the good and the bad. In phase two, what do we do when we're grieving someone we love? We might start doing normal things again, like going back to our normal daily routines, waking up at the same time we used to, making food for ourselves, maybe working or volunteering. We will feel sad, but we can learn to give ourselves some space and some breaks. Maybe that looks like even just going to our car in the middle of something that's brought us outside of the house, errands, or going to a gathering, and just crying for a minute before we can go back and attend to the rest of things. We might do things on our own that we haven't done before, like go out to an opera, go out to something that we haven't done all by ourselves, go to a restaurant alone, or do something in a new way that we haven't done before. For example, especially with a spouse that recently died, or even a child that died, learning how to do some of those things that you've done with family on your own, maybe a vacation. And experiencing first, like your first birthday without the loved one there. It can be a mix of joy in remembering them and remembering good times with them, and sadness that they can't be there for more of those rituals, more birthdays or more Christmases. And then in phase three, we're starting to learn what it's like in this world with them not here. At first we forget. We can't just pick up the phone and call them, but then we know that's not an option. Maybe we journal instead, a note to them that we miss them, but we understand that they're not here with us right now. Sharing their stories with others or lessons to live by, maybe that means that I know when I think of this, like lessons to live by, I think of how my dad said never to let the gas tank get below a quarter tank. So if I share something like that with my kids, they they don't get to experience my dad firsthand, but they get to experience him a little bit by me sharing those lessons to live by that he gave to me, and I can pass along to them too. So they get the lesson, and they also get to know him a little bit too. And then we can continue rituals to remind us of the goodness that we had in our life when they were here with us. Maybe there's something specific to do on a holiday to remember them. Sing a song that they used to sing or that they sang to you as a child. Share a passion that they shared. I wrote fishing or maybe cooking or going skiing. Those are examples for me with my loved ones. And then remembering that grieving changes over time, but it never ends. And so accepting that this loss is always going to be a part of living here on earth. And we can still continue to celebrate who they were. We can still even speak to them and write notes to them and say, if you were here, I would have loved to see the smile on your face when this thing happened. I think that's still sharing a part of you with them and a really beautiful thing. So when we do experience grief, we might miss them. That's right, the psychological impact that we feel and the world reordering around us. So that means our relationships, and especially if this is a primary relationship, it will feel like those dynamics have changed. We might wish for more time with them when we're in new seasons of life and maybe worry about the future. I know this was true for me when I lost my dad at a young age. I wished for more time that he could kind of instruct me on how to be a parent in the world. And there was some worry about navigating parenthood without him there to do that with me. There might be some unresolved conflict, either from the circumstances of the death or changing dynamics with the people who are still alive. And then sorrow regarding the lack of what happened in their life, or what did happen. And I mentioned maybe conflict, relationship issues, addictions, poverty. We feel a grief over losing them, but we additionally may feel a grief over what life was like for them if it wasn't great and what might never be. And that's particularly hard when people die young. I wanted to include this slide. I love the beautiful picture and also just the sense of hopefulness. It's very raw, it's very real. In Matthew, we hear about when Jesus cried out with a loud voice saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? He was at a great point of suffering. It could be excluded from the Bible, but it isn't. And I think that we're talking here about losses and about just some of the saddest and worst moments in our life. And here we have a little slice of what Jesus' saddest and worst moment looked like. And my reflections on that are he felt the weight of his pending death and he was pleading for God to take the suffering away. And I'm guessing he may have felt very overwhelmed and perhaps abandoned while he suffered. So we have an example in God's Son also experiencing suffering and being faithful and being held and being near God in a way that is hard to even understand. This time, I would like for you to pause the video and just to take out a piece of paper and pencil and write down what has come to mind. Just maybe set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes. You might just want to write the name of the person who's significant that you lost, or the names of various people. Perhaps a good memory that you had with them. It could be a bad memory of when they died. And a little note to ask God if God could hold these stories. finally, I just wanted to share that when we're able to speak this with one another and invite our community into our life, it can help us ease our isolation. So if you feel like today or at some point you could share this with someone in the church or a friend, I would encourage you to do so. I think that it might feel burdensome to speak that, but it may really help you feel a shared connection. Someone else knows what's going on, and also be surprisingly a joy for them to hold you in friendship in that way, even though it is difficult to hear. Thank you so much for your time and for your presence. And this has just been a very short talk about grief and about loss, but I hope it has been a blessing to you.